So grateful to be here and very happy to discuss these incredibly important and hard to talk about topics. He has an incredible backbone and staggering moral fiber. Howie is totally committed, completely ethical, totally admirable. No pressure if you can hear this, but honestly, Howie's a hero to me.
John, you joined us before, and it was pretty incredible kind of testimony you gave. And you submitted your life to advocacy for child trafficking, and even 9/11 truth. Maybe you could explain to us, in the last decade, what do you think the most challenging parts of coming alive on some of these issues have been?
Probably the hardest thing, and it continues, is just realizing that pretty much everything that I was told and taught since I was in grade school is probably not true.
And hello, good evening, and welcome to the Traffic Report. Howie, Kelly, how are you?
Good, how are you?
How you doing, John?
I'm here. I'm here. At any rate, I'm glad to be here. So tonight, part two.
Well, John, tell everybody what's happening. So,
well, yeah, I suppose
it's life.
Yeah, my best friend, my shadow on the farm, Blizzard, is dying. Basically of cancer. We didn't know this. We took him in for we thought it was a sprained ankle, and they did x-rays on him, and his bones are hollow, and he's got this huge tumor in his abdomen. It's just, so we have him home. I mean, he's basically okay now, but we're going to have him put down in the next couple of days. And it's just eating my lunch. So I'm happy to be here doing something where I don't have to think about it. So that's what's going on. So prayers are accepted for both of us, and it's part of life. But I was hoping to have him around for a lot longer, but
it's one of the toughest. It's one of the toughest parts of life.
That's how it goes. Yeah. So really, and really the only reason I'm here, because you guys could do this, is just out of respect for not only you, but our guest. And I'm about to get her on the phone right now. And Jessica's appearing by phone because Google Hangout sucks. So that's why. There's no big secret, but we're gonna. That's the phone ring.
Hello.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Hi, John. Condolences about your dog.
Welcome. Thank you. And you've all been very supportive and sweet about that, and a lot of other people too. So I really appreciate that. And I was just saying that, the only reason I'm here tonight, because Howie and Kelly could do this, is the respect I have for what you're doing, Jessica, and to tell the truth, it gives me an hour where I'm not thinking about what needs to be done in the next day or so. So welcome.
Right.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
You know how we medics are, we compartmentalize. So
yeah, exactly. But that's sometimes a good thing. That's how I keep my head straight when I need to work and save somebody's life. I forget about that and then worry about it after that person's in the hands of a surgeon or the doctor.
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. So we're on the same page on that one. I know you and Kelly have been working really hard, comparing notes, researching, and we're just going to continue on with your story. I don't think you're kind of still at the facility. I don't think we finished like your first year there. So is that kind of where we're at?
Pretty much, most of the year. And we're going to get into the psychological abuse that I had suffered by the hands of Dr. Bruce Perry. Of course, Kelly's been researching like a hound on the internet. She dug up a lot of things I didn't know about the man. I mean, but I personally knew him, and one of the kids that he had authority over, which he was the authority. However, he did have many people that worked under him. So, you have to imagine this is not just one person. It's a panel of people that are involved in said studies and research. Well, that's code word for using unsuspecting children as lab rats in order to make a buck.
I'm sorry, sweetie. That was my fault. There's a little feedback there, but it's gone. But, yeah, so... go ahead, you guys. You and Kelly have the helm. Howie and I are just going to try to think of a few intelligent questions, which we usually do. Right, Howie?
Sometimes.
He said right. So.
Jessica, basically, you wanted to go ahead and get into the psychological part of it, and that's where we want to kind of start off today. And you can go ahead and have the floor.
All right. I wanted to start off by just saying some things about, my message, and just to make it clear. And to make myself clear, this has no agenda. This is not about left or right, Republican or Democrat, black or white, Hispanic, no races. This is not about any of that. No agenda. It's about abuse of children and a cooperative conspiracy of corruption and subjugation. This is my account of what happened to me to the best of my recollection. And in no way will I allow any political agenda control my message of child advocacy. This is about innocent victims, whether it happened yesterday or 50 years ago. I'm not going to stand by and allow a system to perpetrate abuse in the forms of sexual, physical, emotional, mental, physical, or any other forms of abuse. I am urging the public to hold local government and its agencies accountable for the actions that they do or the actions that they don't take. So I'm going to start off by saying this, a message I wanted to just get out there. For anyone interested in my thought process, this has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican or any of that.
And I'll chime in briefly. We've been saying that for as long as we've been on the air. We're all on the same page. This is, to me, politics is just a huge psyop anyway, but it's got nothing to do with child trafficking and child sexual abuse. Zero. So thank you for saying that. And
yes,
we're all on the same page on that one.
Right. I just wanted to clarify and let the audience know that I also carry that message. So we're all solid in that unity, at least as far as that goes. But if Kelly would like to, start with Dr. Bruce Perry. I was there a couple months before he came along. A couple months after I had already started there. So the first incident where the young child had told me, stuff. He came along pretty much right after that. So this sets the stage. He's the new, psychologist, pharmacologist, whatever 7 different titles he's been awarded from mysterious sources. And I'll let Kelly have the floor on that one.
Well, as far as the abuse that you're speaking of, just so we can recap, the abuse that you shared, not sharing names, but you had stated that there was some sexual abuse going on with a child, and that had happened prior to Mr. Perry or Dr. Perry coming into the facility. So we're about, what, 1989 is when he came into the facility?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what he had intended to come in after researching, of course, but also you being there, is his agenda, if you will, was to form a type of research in turn. A nonprofit is what his agenda was. So he was actually meeting with philanthropists throughout this research that he was conducting at the school that you were attending during the day, because it was a residential living home. So there was students that were there just during the day, and then of course there were students there or individuals there that were there 24/7. Okay. So as far as Dr. Perry, I mean, we can kind of go, I mean, he's going to be in this throughout this whole shenanigan, but I would like for you to start, where you were as far as with the abuse that you endured. And then you can kind of, of course, it's going to lead us to other abuse, but of course not mentioning names. So if you will start with that.
All right, so basically, Dr. Perry is the lead psychiatrist of St. Joseph's. So he's the one that gets the grant money. So he's the one that holds the quote unquote licenses to get the money from the government and from these universities, because he wasn't just involved with one university. He was involved with U of C and U of I, which are actual separate universities. But he was involved with different programs from different one of them. And I don't know if the public knows, but U of C was involved in the Manhattan Project.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Okay, and just to be clear, the UFC is the University of Chicago.
Correct.
And the U of I is the University of Illinois.
Of Illinois in Chicago, because the University of Illinois has satellite campuses, and the one in Chicago happens to be a satellite campus of the University of Illinois.
Yeah, and can I just do a little history on Perry, just for anybody that didn't hear that last week?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, his and go on Wikipedia, and look at it. And I mean, I my jaw dropped out of nowhere, and we've yet to research where he came from in what was it, Idaho, Kelly?
It was actually North Dakota, Bismarck, North Dakota.
One of those western wasteland states. But at 19 years old, he's accepted to Amherst, and his wife, they're married, is accepted to Stanford, which just happens to be one of the centers for psychological experiments, MK Ultra, the LSD testing, just a really bad place. And boom, the same year they're married, she is ritually murdered in a church on Stanford University with an ice pick with a candle inserted in her. I mean, it just too much, and all of a sudden, Perry drops out of Amherst. He reappears at Northwestern University without a bachelor's degree, is accepted into the medical school, which is practically unheard of. And all of a sudden, boom, he's a graduate. He's got a PhD. He goes into residency and right to that facility where you were at, Jessica. So that's his history, and I'll shut up.
And John, you're correct about all those things. Absolutely. So, my mom had met Dr. Perry as well, because, whenever new people come into the facility, get a hold of your parents, have a sit down, because they go over all of your records, like psychological stuff. And how are you doing in school? How are you faring with other other students? So, I had been going to the Illinois Institute of Optometry for the what they were calling the aftercare program. Okay. And that's where a lot of the psychological testing and the cognitive testing had taken place. Like I said, my mom would have to pick me up from the Illinois Institute of Optometry because the buses didn't run that late. So she would come and get me. So Dr. Perry, had convinced my mom that all these tests that they were insistent that I go through, and this is what I'm talking about. Let's run down the list of things. We're talking about blood draws. We're talking about urine samples. We're talking about daily logs of what you eat. So they wanted to know what time you ate, what you ate, if there was anything affecting your mood, any feelings of fright, any sleeplessness if you couldn't sleep that night. They wanted to know all that every single day. This was a daily thing. So those questionnaires were compiled by people on his panel. Okay, so it wasn't just one group of people.
Now, how frequently did they test your blood, and how frequently did they test your urine? Those samples were taken weekly, daily?
Yeah, weekly.
Crazy.
Yeah. It was, and my mom's thinking that, because these guys, Dr. Perry's got 10 pieces of paper on the wall saying he's an expert in this, he's an expert in that. So my mom's going with trust the expert theory. And he's telling her about, this is, we're going to test for this, and we're going to check, and they're testing for your blood glucose, and they're testing for, your weight. We're talking about weight, height, everything. Name it. Let me get to it. This is how detailed it is. Even changes in your clothing habits. That's how detailed they were. Changes in your clothing habits. Huh?
I'm not an expert, but that sounds like the beginnings of a mind control experiment. I mean, making the person aware of everything that they're watching, everything that you do.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Absolutely. They wanted to know all that information, and it was to be enforced daily. And if you didn't cooperate, you were sent to the adjustment room. Some people, they would beat you and drag you off. I was never beaten by anybody because I knew when to shut my mouth. I would be like, okay, I don't want to get beat down. But they would still send you into the adjustment room. And in the adjustment room, there were cubicles, okay? And you had to stay in the cubicles of seclusion, and you couldn't have anything. You couldn't have paper. You couldn't have pencils. And, they would feed you. You would get lunch. And there was always, like Mr. Tillman, Mr. Larry, I think it was Larry Harris. Those were like all the counselors that were in the adjustment room. And, one time I asked, I was in there, one of my first times in there, I had a smart mouth, and they would send you there. They'd be like, you want to smart off, go to the adjustment room. Because it's, they told me it stands for attitude adjustment. And some of these kids were being physically restrained in leather restraints in the adjustment room. Imagine being taken into a room and put in a cubicle. We're talking a square box. A square box, and told to sit there for 8-9 hours.
Solitary confinement, basically.
Yes.
Another component of mind control.
Well, even our regular desks were cubicles, but the adjustment room cubicles surrounded you more because you had to actually step more into it. It wasn't just like the ones in the classrooms were open cubicles. Like it was 3-sided, it would only have like on the 3 sides, but it was still a cubicle. It wasn't a normal desk. and you were shoved into a corner by yourself. So, like, the closest person to you was a good 8, 9, 10 feet.
It reminds me of what the Vietnamese did, or the North Koreans to our troops, and also what the Nazis did. I mean that.
Oh, and in Cambodia, they did. Pol Pot did it in Cambodia.
Yep.
Absolutely, they tortured this way, seclusion tactics. But this is that they did this to children, and my stuff can be backed up in those articles that you posted. They do talk about the adjustment room. They do talk about the cubicles.
And leather restraining the kids and beating them.
And leather restraining, yes, they do. Yes, they do. They admit to all of it. Nobody went to jail. That's a misgrievance of justice, if I've ever heard one. These are adults doing this to children.
Wow. And you had children. I remember the little boy that you told us about that was, telling you that he was being raped, and over the period of time that you were there were other children that
yeah, they did come along later on. He was the first one that where I felt fear, actual fear, like the adrenaline in my body dropped. I froze, and I could actually feel my pupils dilating, and my spine felt like a cold shiver, and I couldn't move, like physically. I was just like what?
God.
Yeah. And then my next response is I was like, I want to go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know how many times people ran away from there? Running away from there was constant. And let me tell you another story about running away. One instance because that same area where the priests are kept, the front door was over there. Okay. And one time, one of my classmates was upset about being sexually molested by a priest. And his family didn't live too far from St. Joe's. It was a good 2 to 3 miles down 35th Street into Bridgeport. But he was willing to take that risk, So he darts out the front door, and of course, nobody can catch him. He's young. So he jets down 35th Street. He's gone. Boom. Bye. Well, a couple hours later, the police brought him back to the building. And, of course, they sent him away for a psychological evaluation, as soon as he got returned. Because this happened all within the same school day, because the police brought him back. And I remember the police being in the hallway returning him, and, him looking really somber and quiet, staring at the ground, staring off, and the police are just like, here, just hand them over. It's their problem.
Yeah, it sounds like Chicago cops.
It's their problem.
Yeah.
So, nobody wants
and
street child, right?
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, as corrupt as that city was and the way things were set up, they had no alternative but to do that. Really, I mean, when these children were wards of this institution,
which is true, because when children are wards of the institution, there's nobody else to step in. That's the last line. That is the end of the line.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a fact, John. You're right. It is the end of the line.
Wow.
So who are they going to hand him over to? But I mean, that's here nor there. I mean, they return him. They send him off for a psychological evaluation to their facility. Okay, Northwestern.
Yeah.
Okay, he went to Northwestern.
Yeah.
For a couple weeks.
Perry's buddies,
Right, and they're all in house. Everybody's in house on these things. Okay, comes back to the class, and I was like, hey man, you took off. How far did you get? Because you want to cheer your buddy on, knowing why he took off.
Yeah.
Okay. He tells me, well, he ran away. Of course, they called the cops, so he was already on their radar. He went to 51st and Wentworth. He decided to go. He wanted to get help. He was trying to get help. And he told me, he told them what was going on, that those priests were molesting him. He told.
Now, when you say he told them, I'm assuming you're meaning the law enforcement, the Chicago Police Department. Okay.
Absolutely. Oh, and the staff knew about it too. They're not oblivious to as why he's running out the front door. They know because they get morning briefings on things that happen on the dorm overnight every day. Because he was a dorm kid.
And you told us too that during the day they could escape, but during the night they have an electric fence to.
Right. They used to have an electric fence where you would pull your car, like where the car goes in. Yeah, so they had it on during the night because my mom was nervous about the fence. She was like, this is a little excessive, even in this bad. It was a bad neighborhood, and back in the day it was rough. It's kind of rough when the CIA is peddling heroin and cocaine right down the street from your school, and at 13 years old, those are not people from around that area. So you're like, police of some sort. You ever heard of the Iran-Contra affair?
Yeah.
It was, that was, going on in that neighborhood. They were peddling.
The crack explosion that was brought to us by our Central Intelligence, and the Clintons in Mena, Arkansas, and Ronald Reagan and Ollie North, and wow,
and little government institutions here in Chicago, and I thought they were dealing it right there. So, I knew those guys didn't belong. I knew they didn't belong in that neighborhood.
And the first little boy that came and told you this. They tell your parents, oh, well, this is common in these children. They're going to accuse the people that are taking care of them or abusing them. But guess what? Here's another child, same story. And what a bunch of horseshit. I mean,
different background of a child, but still abuse in the family. He's a blonde haired, blue eyed boy.
And that's the one that was in that article, correct?
This one was a different one, but they were from the same area. Yeah. It was there was more than one boy. They had the prize boys. Let me put it that way, the prize boys.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is those were the ones that had gotten gifts and extra expensive clothes and extra trips and taken places and paid for visits for the places here and there.
Yeah, a grooming operation, just plain and simple.
Right. So anyhow, Perry, and his team, because it's a panel, it's a bunch of people from all these institutions, all these college programs, because they're all receiving grant money in order to do what they're doing. So all these, they're basically students. Come in and under his direction perform different things. And I'm going to tell you the first how it started. So they say, oh, you're dyslexic and we're going to have you sit down and we want you to learn all these number sequences. So I went and tried to learn, and they were getting really frustrated with me because I was getting fatigued after, hours of trying to learn all these number sequences. And so this happened at the College of Optometry. So the students over there, because it was more than one, but there was, it seemed like there was like a head resident of optometry over there. He was getting frustrated with me because I was losing cooperation, So he sends a memo over to Dr. Perry and that team and tells them, hey, can we get her to cooperate? Is there anything you can do? This is what we need her to do. Is there anything that you guys can do to cooperate? So then you get bullied into, then like I went to one of my counseling sessions, and lo and behold, the counselor is, encouraging me and urging me to cooperate, with the team, go along with the team. And you know, trying to help you. This is to help you. They always turn it around on you and made it about you and your ability not to cooperate, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, at my age, you know, at 12, when you're 12, 13, 14, you're an adolescent, which means like adult in training, right? Adolescent. And you're kind of coming around to things, and I don't want to cooperate with them, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And even your sixth sense as a kid knew what they were doing. And not only that, you know what else is going on in there. You know kids are getting raped in there. And how are you going to, and they're covering for, and that's what I see. Yeah, I'm sure he was doing research and experiments, but his main job, the way I see it, it was to cover for the priests raping these kids. You know, that was like, so they could have somebody in authority, you know, a neuropsychiatrist say that, oh, these kids are full of shit. They're not getting raped, you know?
Right. But his just may I add this, his particular study at that time was predominantly, and it's in his research, was basically with kids that have been sexually abused. So there was definitely an agenda, if you will. So to act as if he didn't know, I mean, it's a target that was chosen to be a part of the study.
Yeah, it seems like everybody was targeted.
Right.
But I mean,
you couldn't just go there and get in there. You had to be pre-screened, which I talked about the last time at Fitton Park. So, right, you had to be pre-screened. They didn't just take anybody, you know.
And just you know, you went through everything that and I hope people understand this. You that first child told you that you reported it.
Yep.
Your mom took the issue up with the school, and then you find that they're covering for the priests, and that kid goes through hell because you reported it, basically, right?
Well, I mean, he never said anything else to me about it ever again.
Yeah, but you know, and I mean you.
And I know what they put me through.
Right.
Okay. Because they weren't letting me off the hook. Okay. And that's how a lot of this other stuff came into play with urging me. Like I said, so one, you know, I go to my psychology, you know, and then so I also had a dyslexia specialist that, you know, they pull you out of class for a lot. This is not like you're sitting in your class. So you're getting pulled out like 5-6 times a day by different quote unquote this expert and that expert, and they want to ask you this question and have you perform that test all day long. This was not like they're teaching me ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. So then they told the teacher, they told the teacher what set and model of number sequences they wanted me to learn. So they encouraged him to put the pressure on me. So I had, you know, then I'm getting pressure from the teacher to learn these things. Then I'm getting pressure from the dyslexia expert, from the social worker. Then they're telling my mom that I'm not cooperating. So then I'm starting to get heat from my mom because she's upset because she's, in her mind, these people are helping you.
Yeah, and they're basically putting a wedge between you and the parent.
Correct. Because my relationship with my mom was not good at that time in my life because of this stuff. Also,
another tactic of mind control.
Right.
I mean, if you had I'm putting up, there's a scumbag sitting on Oprah, and I, you know, when I heard he was on Oprah, 60 Minutes, those two on 60 Minutes,
yeah,
I knew it was wrong right there. I mean, just right there.
Right.
And you know, they're basically, and if you had a checklist of mind control, you know, everything that you've covered, it's like check down the list. And
well, I mean, like let me keep with going on with another part of it is how they progress it too. It's they don't come at you immediately. They don't like come full throttle at you. They work it into you. And as it gets deeper and deeper, it becomes more unsuspecting as it's happening. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're grooming you for lack of a
whatever crazy. I want to know if anybody's heard any. I'm about to tell people there's more tests. I got more out there, more psychological and cognitive and all this other stuff they were doing to me. If anybody knows the name of any of these things they were doing to me, I'd really appreciate if you can direct me to the appropriate link or article, because the number sequence thing was the first level. So they talk about transition. Everything is a transition, no matter what we did. So if you got on the bus, that was a transition. If you get off the bus, it's a transition. So everything structured is a transition. So they considered my first round of learning these number sequences as a first transition. So then once you were cooperative and you went along with the training as far as the brain training goes and learning these sequences, then they move on to the next level. Okay. And meanwhile, I'm filling out daily food logs and all that other psychobabble they like to shove down your throat, which is, in my mind, and I'm a healthcare professional, and to me, this is all like psychobabble BS in my opinion.
right.
Because I really don't know why they were, I have no idea. So then the next level was one of the teams, because these are teams of people. So, they're students, so they come up with a theory. Oh, let's take the subject, that would be me, or any other child that was involved in these programs. Let's take the subject and set up this maze, okay? So they took like if you ever see like cubicles, like at trade shows or, like in large office spaces where they use those cheap cubicles. So they set up like a maze, okay? And they wanted to test my mapping ability, okay? So every day before they performed, after the number sequences, every day when I came in, the first thing I had to do was get on a balance beam and walk on it straight with my arms out. And they had a pendulum that would swing and a strobe light. And they had an EEG machine, if anybody knows what that's for.
Yes.
It's for detecting brain seizures and stuff like that.
And what this is sounding more and more like is they're inducing fear in you. And where do we hear that again? We hear that in Nexium,
right?
What that Dr. Frankenstein is doing.
Right. Well, I mean, they eased into it slowly, because even doing that really didn't intimidate too much fear into me, because the explanation for that was the following tests that I was going to be performing could induce a seizure, and they want to make sure that I wasn't going to have a seizure before they start tampering with me, basically.
Now, I got a question for you, Jessica.
Yeah.
Were the kids that were being sexually abused going through this same regimen?
You know what? I don't know. But there were a lot of, every kid there was involved with the panel, the whole panel of all these people. But when they do these things, they separate you. So, they might pull you out of class and you might be gone for 2 and 3 hours, and they pulled somebody else out of class while you were gone doing something else.
But whether you were residential or bussed in, it was the same curriculum for everybody there. So I think it would be safe to assume that, and what it sounds like to me is they've got a control group, which is you, and then they've got the group that they're molesting, and they're comparing notes as, you know,
Probably.
their brain chemistry and their reaction, and that what was part of this too that we uncovered is, and this is Perry's own, you know, more Dr. Frankenstein shit. They're giving these kids a powerful blood pressure medication.
Yep.
To blunt their response to sexual abuse. You know,
Yep.
So yeah, and people, you know, because I'm trying to put myself, you know, where the viewers are and what they're thinking about, and it just it seems like, you know, they're running experiments on everybody. They're trying, you know, they're covering for, you know, the pedophiles that are coming through that place, you know, a dime a dozen, because you were having priests transfer in and out of there. You had no idea where they came from, where they were going, you know, and
same thing with the staff too. It seemed like some people were there the whole time I was there, like Mr. Tillman. But then there were some people who were in and out of there like crazy. You know.
Well,
so,
and also what I wanted you to talk a little bit about too is you saw kids come in from Boys Town in Nebraska.
Yes.
And
yeah.
What age were those kids, and what was the circumstances where did they stay for a while, or were they there for a short time, or what? How did that work?
Well, from all of the facilities, like a couple of the kids that came from like Maryville, the other facility in Illinois that they had. Like some of those kids, they stayed there like after a while. But some kids, they stayed maybe 3-4 months and then they were gone.
And did you ever find out where they? I mean, you knew they came in from Nebraska, which is Boys Town,
right?
And we do you? I guess you would have had no way of knowing where they went after they left.
Unless I don't ever recall anybody saying, "Hey, I'm going to be going to blah 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 next week," because most of those transfers weren't like something that were like public. You know, like it would be all of a sudden, "Hey, we're taking you tomorrow to the XYZ and ABC."
Yeah, just like federal prison sounds like.
Right.
Well, did you have contact with these students?
You mean recently or?
No. With the say these kids that came in from Boys Town, would they be in your class for a while?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, do you remember talking to them or being like, where you?
Yeah, one of the kids that came from there was openly gay.
Did they?
He was trying to have relationships with some of the other students.
Wow.
He was openly gay. He was like 14. I know he was like a year older than me. So he was probably about 14 at that era when I was there.
So in that environment, you've got a hypersexualized child that's trying to have sex with other kids.
Yes. And they knew that. When he got there, it wasn't a secret. Because that's why that's one of the reasons they shuffle some of the kids around too, is because if they're accused of doing something with maybe a smaller residential child, they just ship them off to another one.
Kind of like what they do with Catholic priests.
How did that square in a Catholic, run school that there was an openly gay student there?
How did they take to it?
Yeah, what did the priest have to say about that?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So that's only for sermons. It didn't apply to the school.
Right. He was definitely flamboyantly gay. Wow. So it wasn't a mystery or a secret, even at that age.
Well, as were a lot of these priests.
Right.
Yeah, and let's just make that point again. Being gay has nothing to do with molesting kids, okay? But the sexual preference of a lot of these priests, they just happen to be gay, but they also are predators. So, and one has really nothing to do with the other. But
right. Who knows? Who knows if that's the way he was? But
although John, being molested does seem to have some bearing on one's sexuality later on in life.
I would agree with that. The trauma.
Well, yeah, and there has been actually research on that
Sure.
that it's a brain thing. It's a brain imprint, and whenever that first sexual experience occurs, and whoever it's with leaves, it's like a chemical, and this is what these assholes were studying too. How
Yes.
the neurotransmitters worked in the brain. And
yes.
That's so if that happens to be, a child that's molested by a male, that's going to be an experience that they want to repeat in some way, through the sex drive, because that's so.
I probably should have prefaced my last statement that it's my opinion that being molested, if you're a boy that was molested by a male, that it has a bearing on your sexuality. That is my opinion, and it's based on experience.
Yeah, and there's actually science to go with that. It's not.
Intuitively, I know it is. I just can't prove it.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of that, or not, these are children we're talking about being sexually molested by priests or adults. We're talking about adults. So whether here nor there, if they had a gay preference prior to the abuse or after, it's here nor there. There's abuse going on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
but
I'm gonna
go ahead.
I'm gonna proceed with some of the other experimentations. So, the buck didn't stop at some of these things. Like I said, I was pre-screened every day, but before they started with whatever they decided, whatever barrage of tests and turn her upside down and flip her this way tests, they always perform like a seizure. That's what the walking on the beam and the strobe light. So I never had seizure disorder, so I always wondered about that, because I was like, what's this about? My mom's like, oh, they're just making sure you don't have seizures, and I'm like, do they really need to do that every time? Yeah, they did it every time.
Well, so, your welfare and the other, obviously the other children in there, the concern for their welfare was zero. They're there to be raped, and they're there to be experimented on.
Correct. So onward to one of the next procedures, or one of the next things they did to me. So I come in, go through the daily screening, and and that also included the questionnaires, what I ate, all that other BS. They want to know pee and poo and all that ins and outs. They want to know that too. So they bring me in a room that I hadn't been in before one time. And it was like a table, and I could tell it was like handmade. Like it looked like somebody maybe from the college in the craft shop or something, the lumber shop made, but it was a table that was made, and it was like it was robotic almost. It tilted. It would change directions. But they had me get on there, and they cover your eyes, they cover your ears, and they put like a weighted blanket over you. Okay. So the headset that you wear, you can hear like them talking to you, like, oh, you might get hot, or tell us if you're gonna throw up, or tell us, they would ask me to, give them a signal if I was in trouble, because I do have asthma.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And so you would hear them talking and instructing, and the first time I did it, this is when I was like, this is what's going on here. They even handmade this table for me to get on. And I get underneath the weighted blanket, it's like a lead blanket. Like if you ever had an X-ray, those vests they put on you. Well, this is a blanket that like kind of covered you all the way. Okay, so he tells me you're gonna hear like the ocean waves. So like a white noise, ocean waves come about. So then he tells me during the course of this portion, I need you to focus on the number sequences. So the numbers we were working on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to change, like, he told me there's a sound in the ocean waves that I can't hear because it's out of my hearing range. But he was going to be changing those sounds during the course of the time that I was going to be enclosed, basically trapped down underneath this weighted blanket. And he said if I feel any changes, he wants to know exactly when they occur, because if he changes one of the sounds, wants to know which one's eliciting a response. But all you physically hear was like ocean waves. So it's like little ocean waves. I'm falling asleep. I'm hot. I'm agitated. I'm a kid. I don't want to be trapped in this thing. I'm like, if I'm going to be sitting here, I'm going to protest by not cooperating. And he's real insistent. Oh, you've been working on these numbers for quite a while, and I know you know them. He's like scolding me because he's getting short with me, And so I'm like, fine, whatever. I'm going to work on these sequences. So I repeat the number sequences while the ocean waves, and then after they're finished with that, they get me off the table, and they're like, now draw what you saw. And I'm like, well, I saw a bunch of like pixelations and squiggly lines and just like, I don't know, like little eye fuzzies, I guess you would call them. I'm like, how do you draw that on a paper? So I'm drawing, and they're getting frustrated with me. But was it the right number sequence? Well, was there a time you don't remember anything? And I'm like, no, I remember everything. Like you were there. And they had an EEG machine hooked up to me, mind you, the whole time. And they did monitor my vital signs, like my blood pressure and all the temperature.
Did over the period of time that you were there, did they administer any drugs to you?
Not to me. No.
And how about the other children?
Yeah, it was open. It was open. They did it during class.
Did you? And I know we know about the the clonidine they were giving these kids. Is there any other medications that they were?
Yeah, Haldol, Thorazine,
Haldol,
Ativan.
Haldol. Wow.
Haldol, yeah. When they come running in the room, anytime a teacher didn't feel like dealing with the mouth of the day with whoever wanted to act out of line per se, they would call over the goon squad. They would come down from the adjustment room, and sometimes the nurse would come and administer Thorazine and Haldol.
Wow. And for people that don't know, they give that in asylums, and I mean that is the most powerful tranquilizer that turns people into vegetables. Basically, they call it. They actually shuffle. They can't even walk. Similar to Thorazine, and they're
mind you, all that while they're getting an ass beaten and restrained and dragged down the hallway by staff, right in front of everybody. Right.
Now, who is the one that's administering these drugs? Is it?
Okay, Kelly had a question for you, Jen.
I'm sorry. Who was the one that was administering these drugs whenever these instances occurred?
I want to say it's like a staff nurse or a nurse, like somebody who comes and administers the medications. Basically a nurse.
Right. Okay.
I wouldn't know their official title. You know, because since I wasn't medicated, my interaction with those kind of people were very limited.
Okay.
Like my majority of interaction with people like that was watching them come, get my classmate, pull them out of the room to medicate them and return them to the class. Since I'm not medicated, I'm not interacting with them.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But I know what was going on because that's why the whole purpose for them to come in the room and people tell you. I had actual classmates that actually used to hide the pills underneath their tongues, and some of the other students used to like to collect them and abuse them.
Yeah.
So that was like collateral on the dorm.
Yeah. And it just sounds like just a horror show. I mean, they're So from your, so where time wise, where are we at? Because we're reaching about an hour now, so we're
I would say we're about near my end of the first year into the second year, probably the first year and a half, because school did not end like a normal school either. Like our summer vacation was only 3 weeks long. It started at like 4th of July, and we had to be back at like the very last week of July. So we were in school the entire time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So even the day kids, we had to be there because they need that funding from the government.
So are we at a good place to stop for now, or can you go through the rest of the time you were there, or where do you think? What would you think? Because I want to talk more about Perry and where he's at, and maybe that's probably going to be next show. I would imagine.
Yeah, we can go along with that. I mean, absolutely. It's up to you guys.
But are there more incidents you want to cover between the time you were there and I'd like to get an idea of the kids that reported to you over that period of time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So of course there are quite a few instances. So we need to paint that picture. This panel of psychiatrists and psychologists, all his goon squad or whatever. All these people, weekly, we had like a class, so everybody had to be pulled into the class in a round circle, and we had to diffuse the class. So basically, pulled into the class, and if like certain kids were lashing out extra, we used to get punished for that. So if one kid was extra bad, they'd say, "Oh, nobody from this group," because they didn't call us class, or groups. Nobody from this group is going to have dessert today because X, Y, Z, and ABC had to be restrained, and he was out of control, and so now the rest of you suffer. So now they pull you in a group session, and they pinpoint that person. They single them out and say, you want to explain this behavior, why everybody had to have their privileges taken away. So sometimes a lot of different feelings would come out during those sessions where they would talk about, sexual abuse that had been ongoing.
So okay, let me get this straight. So you're having like a group therapy session, and kids in that therapy session are talking about being molested in the institution?
Not only the institution, but a lot of times they would talk about like their past experience as well. It was a combination, basically. Like somebody would say, hey, to the group, hey, I was really upset because I was, it was my mom's birthday yesterday, and she was my abuser, and or something would trigger it, and these poor kids that were going through this were supposed to be held accountable to their peers, and that's just not right.
Yeah, and
in a group session. So and anybody who's speaking out against the staff Well, you know, because people, their emotions run high when you're putting them in a group setting. Here comes the restraint squad. The goon squad would come busting in the room. You know, if you started talking about things that they didn't go along with what they wanted to hear.
How did they react to kids that were complaining about abuse going on in the facility?
They would come and restrain them, punch them, kick them, hold them down. I've seen kids held down until they passed out, totally passed out on the floor.
So that's not something they wanted discussed.
Correct. So
okay.
dare not discuss these things that are going on in the home.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a shush campaign, you know.
Yeah.
But they still intimidate. These are intimidating tactics, you know, and they would try to force, you know, your peers to execute some sort of sick, demented abuse towards other students. To me, that's like encouraging abuse towards your peer from the adults.
Now, to your knowledge, Jessica, the abuse was happening by everybody, but the sexual abuse was that mainly just the priests, or was there people associated with the university, to your knowledge?
I don't know about those people performing any sort of inappropriate sexual acts on any of the kids.
Okay.
Now, I told you about that Hollywood element. We're going to get in. That's going to be an entirely different show. But those people were the only other incidences outside the priests that I knew of.
Okay, and I know from reading that article that the staff were accused of that. So it was not just the priests, but
right.
like these orderlies, whatever the hell they were, and
right.
not only of like literally beating the crap out of these kids, but sexually abusing them too. So
right.
Did you? Is that something you were aware of when you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So. So the kids.
Yes, and,
go ahead.
And of course, I told you about the cocaine limo rides.
Yeah, and that's probably for another show.
That's gonna be a different show because it's
right.
cocaine limo rides. Those weren't the priests, but guess what? The people given those cocaine limo rides, the rape rides, they were sure dropping large amount of cash every time they showed up.
Yeah, Hollywood bigwigs. Well, that'll be covered, and we've
absolutely
we've the time flies, and so we'll leave it there, and next show we'll get into a little more about Dr. Perry, and I like not that it matters, but I'm sure we want to put some kind of quantity on, the number of kids that you saw while you were there that told you at least they were being sexually abused, so we can, get an idea about that. But and I think that's a big part of it. You got Hollywood stars taking these kids out on limo rides, with drugs. So that's something that we're going to want to hear, and I want to do a little bit more, and Kelly's done an amazing amount of research on Perry and what he's doing now, so we'll just, does that sound good to everybody?
Oh yeah, that definitely sounds fair to me.
Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, is there a possibility that we might be able to do a show before a week from now, possibly, if that's something we could speak of?
Absolutely. If Jessica can, yeah, I can.
Right.
I'm going on a camping trip with my husband this weekend, so I probably can't do it till next Wednesday.
Yeah. All right.
I'm sorry.
Well,
okay. No, that's fine.
All right. Well, we'll just keep it going. So
yeah.
And yeah, I would hate to see you, the job you do. Please go on your vacation. So.
Right, I need it.
And thank you, Jessica. And I know it's a complicated story. It's, and I hope people are getting the big picture on this, that, what this institution was about. It's a wholesale factory for not only abusing kids, but covering up the abuse, desensitizing everybody that went there, and just, it sounds to me like a concentration camp. And this is run by the Catholic Church with the full knowledge of the diocese. And the amount of time that operated was, with complaints, and then they close it down because they found, they say they found adult porn on the guy's computer. Really, so thank you. And I know this is very difficult for you to recount these experiences, because I just can't imagine it as a 12-year-old, child, because that's what they're doing. I mean, you've checked off, 5 or 6 of, it's like a Korean prisoner of war, or North Korean prisoner of war, or, a concentration camp. It's just terrible. And what we're also going to get into too, because and you knew this, and you alerted us to this, and Kelly has confirmed it. This is a network, and we didn't have time tonight, but these same Sisters of St. Joseph right now in Vermont, they're unearthing bodies on their facilities. So we're going to get into that too.
Yep, same people.
Yep.
Same network.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Howie.
Thank you, and good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Jess. And you enjoy your vacation. If you need anything,
I will.
Holler. Have fun, okay?
All right, bye-bye.
All right, good night. And thank you, everybody that watched. Guys, hang out for a minute. And we'll see you next Wednesday, maybe in between. Who knows? So thanks for all the support. Good night.
Good night.